So start from the beginning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise today in support of House Bill 2005, the Gun Violence Prevention Bill, a practical measure that will reduce gun violence in Oregon and make our communities safer. I firmly believe that every one of us was called to this work by a desire to make life better for all Oregonians. And toward that end, we all want to protect our communities and safeguard the most vulnerable around us, especially our children. As a mom and a pediatrician, you can imagine that this is front and center for me. Colleagues, there are some tragic realities we must not look away from. Every single day in America, 120 people are killed by guns, and more than 200 are shot and wounded. The impact of these shootings to the victims, their families, their communities, and to first responders costs our nation and our state dearly. Perhaps as chilling is the reality that in the U.S., gun violence is now the #1 cause of death for children between the ages of 1 and 18. Almost 5,000 children and youth lost their lives to gun violence in 2021 in America. This is a reality I refuse to accept. Colleagues, every every Oregonian has the right to safety in their homes, in their schools, at the grocery store, and in houses of worship. Turns out more guns do not make us safer. As some of you know, I got my start in the balconies and hallways of this building as an advocate for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. I fought alongside fellow volunteers from across the entire state for policies that reduce gun violence. And this dovetailed perfectly with my work as a pediatrician. And now, as a legislator, every decision I make in this building is guided by my North Star of making Oregon the best, the most equitable, and the safest state in which to grow up. Reducing gun violence is core to that mission. And last year, I was proud to bring my knowledge as a pediatrician and advocate with Moms Demand as I joined my fellow colleagues to find an Oregon solution to the epidemic of gun violence happening in our state. Over the past year, I worked with Representative Paul Evans, a military veteran and gun owner, Representative Jason Krupp, a gun owner and prosecutor who grew up hunting right here in Oregon, and Representative Dacia Graber, also a gun owner, firefighter, paramedic, fellow Moms Demand Action advocate, who sees firsthand what gun violence can do in her role as a first responder. This particular group of legislators had many discussions, and we didn't always see eye to eye. But for us, we saw this as our strength, and for nearly a year, we brought our unique perspective to the table as we engaged extensively with gun owners and enthusiasts, retailers, the Oregon Department of Justice, local governments, advocates, and survivors of gun violence to craft the common sense measure that we present today. The result of this collaboration is the Gun Violence Prevention Bill, House Bill 2005, and we have this before you for consideration. This offers an Oregon solution to an urgent nationwide problem, and it will make our communities safer while respecting the rights of responsible gun owners and giving high regard to Oregon's heritage and culture of hunting and recreation. The Gun Violence Prevention Bill will do 3 things. First, as outlined in sections 1 through 5, 14, and 16 through 19, House Bill 2005 will prohibit the possession, sale, and transfer of undetectable or unserialized so-called ghost guns, which are increasing in popularity and which thwart the necessary background check system which is already in place for gun purchases and gun transfers. Ghost guns are the weapons of choice for violent criminals, gun traffickers, dangerous extremists, and people legally prohibited from buying firearms. These guns are being recovered from crime scenes in record numbers. There was a bust of a ghost gun workshop just last week in the home of a prohibited purchaser in Portland, and a year ago, a similar ring of ghost guns was discovered right here in Salem. Second, per sections 6, 7, 13, and 15, House Bill 2005 will raise the age of purchase and possession of firearms to 21 years old, while allowing exemptions for those firearms traditionally used in hunting and recreation. Remember, the federal government stipulates that one must be 21 years old to purchase a handgun, but only 18 years old to purchase a rifle, including semi-automatic assault rifles. The provision to raise the age to 21 for non-hunting firearms is important because 18 to 20-year-olds commit gun homicides at triple the rate of adults who are 21 and older. Finally, in sections 8 through 12, the Gun Violence Prevention Bill will give local control to cities, counties, and special districts to allow their locally elected governing boards and councils to prohibit all firearms in their public buildings and adjacent grounds if they so choose. And furthermore, the final section, Section 20, declares an emergency, and this 2023 Act takes effect upon passage. The three actions in this bill all work to reduce gun violence, help law enforcement do their jobs, and make our communities safer. And as you will hear my colleague, Representative Evans, say, this bill is the balance between personal liberties and public safety. And you will hear from my colleagues on the first two provisions of this bill, what my shorthand is ghost guns and raising the age of purchase and possession. I want to focus my remaining time on the third part of this measure, which is allowing local control over guns in public buildings. A little bit of background. Under existing state law, firearms are already prohibited in all public buildings, unless the carrier has a concealed handgun license, also known as a CHL. In 2021, this legislature passed Senate Bill 554, which grants local school, college, and university boards the ability, should they choose, to prohibit all firearms on their campuses, including those carried by those with concealed handgun licenses. Around 30 local school boards have chosen to protect their communities by prohibiting all firearms on their campuses. This affects 200,000 Oregon students and includes school districts from Tillamook to Klamath Falls to Umatilla, as well as many other communities from across the state. Clearly, local leaders, both rural and urban, have shown that restricting guns in schools is something they and their communities value, without forcing the same on communities who don't choose to do that for their schools. However, we do not allow other jurisdictions to have the same option. The status quo right now is that the state dictates what is allowed in public buildings across Oregon. My clinic, a private business, bars all guns from its premises. Shouldn't we allow local governments to do the same? Shouldn't we allow local jurisdictions to put in place measures to protect school board members, city hall staff, and election workers? Let me repeat, firearms are already prohibited in public buildings and have been for decades. This bill would simply give locally elected governing bodies the option to strengthen that policy to include CHL holders. This acknowledges and honors the unique differences in Oregon communities. Local decisions to restrict firearms would only affect public buildings and their adjacent grounds, and nowhere else. Local governments would define which grounds adjacent to their buildings this restriction would apply to and would be required to post signage clearly indicating where these policies apply. The terminology adjacent grounds already exists in statute, and House Bill 2005 does not create any new definitions. Can I ask a quick question? Can folks yield their time for me on the carry?
They can.
Okay, that was my understanding. I was getting a different message from. Anyway, the terminology adjacent, I apologize. The terminology adjacent grounds already exists in statute, and House Bill 2005 does not create any new definitions. We don't define every word in statute. We rely on the plain meaning of those words. Adjacent, we know, means next to or adjoining. Colleagues, we stood on this floor 5 weeks ago to take a moment of silence to honor and mourn the 3 9-year-olds and 3 staff members who died in a mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville. No one here failed to take that action. We are here to do the same today, to honor the lives of Oregonians who have been impacted by gun violence, to stand with our colleagues and put the health and safety of children, adults, and those who might knock on the wrong door by mistake first and foremost. I imagine that you all like I, believe in the fundamental right to live in freedom from fear, as well as the right to live and travel safely in our community. The Gun Violence Prevention Bill honors these rights. It will protect the lives of our constituents, make our communities safer, and help law enforcement officers come home at the end of the day, all while elevating local control, honoring family traditions, and respecting responsible gun owners. I urge an aye vote on House Bill 2005. Thank you.